Hi, this is Ken McCarthy, and we are celebrating the 20th anniversary of the System Seminar, the seminar that in many ways launched internet marketing as we know it today. And let me give you some examples of why that is actually an accurate statement. Squeeze pages, first introduced to the public in a big way at the System Seminar. Autoresponders, especially sequential autoresponders, email sequences, first introduced at the System Seminar. Using pay-per-click at all. We were really the first serious training on that subject ever. But more importantly, or as importantly, we showed people how to use pay-per-click ads to split test headlines and prices and offers and ad copy. And it's a little known fact that the great book title, The 4-Hour Work Week, came from that method. By the way, if you ask that fellow what his favorite book was, he'll tell you it was a book by Dan Kennedy, the book that really changed his life. And it just so happened that chapters in that book on internet marketing were written by yours truly. Just a little historical footnote I wasn't even aware of until recently. We were also the first to talk about the fact that you can actually use long copy on the internet and it will work. Believe it or not, people didn't think that would work. And we said it will work. We recommend that you do it. So all those long sales letters you've seen over the years, including the video sales letters, they all have their root in the System Seminar. And we're rooted in classic direct response advertising. And that was probably our biggest contribution to the whole thing, which was to tell all the gearheads and technical nerds and gurus that this is not a technical business, this is a direct response business. And what I've been doing is reading chapters from the book, The System Club Letters, and I got to the point where I was going to read the chapters about copywriting, and I decided I got to hold something back. So those sections, the only way you're going to get those particular sections is if you buy the book, The System Club Letters, and I strongly recommend you do. We've got 3 world-class copywriters, Lori Morgan, Ben Settle, and Doberman Dan, who say this book is one of the best business books they've ever read. So 3 copywriters think this is one of the best business books they've ever read. Ben says he's read it 30 or 40 times. It's been that important to him. So you might consider getting it. But anyway, we've been talking about great copywriting books, not mine, but everybody else's, and books that I recommend that you look into. And we've got one last classic book before we go on to books by living authors. And this one is by Victor Schwab. No one ever talks about Victor Schwab, and you're going to see why that's a big mistake. He wrote a book called How to Write a Good Advertisement or Advertisement, and it's an oldish book. It came out, let's see, 1962. All right, I believe it. He was a fantastic copywriter. He was very successful in the ad agency business. But I'm going to let you in on 2 secrets that nobody except my students know. I've kept this under my hat for years, but I'm going to let it out because it's a big one. There are 2 really important books out there. One is called How to Make Friends and Influence People. The other is called How I Raised Myself from a Failure to Success in Selling by Frank Becker. And if you've been lucky enough to be a student of Gary Bencivenga, the highest paid copywriter in the world, and that's not hot air that people blow, we're talking about actual paydays and paychecks. He literally earned $5 million on one letter. A letter he wrote. We're not talking about a business that he had to go into. He didn't have to buy inventory. He didn't have to ship product. He didn't have to invent the product. All he did was write a sales letter. I think it was a long one. I think it was 32 pages. But, you know, any time you can get paid $5 million for writing 32 pages, take that job. The reason he got paid that well is he had a deal that he set up way back in the 80s, which is really amazing, because money was worth a whole lot more in the 1980s. And he was paid $25,000 up front with a 5-cent commission on every letter mailed. So if you mailed 1,000,000 letters, you would owe him 5 cents times 1,000,000, which, is not a shabby amount of money. However, this particular letter was mailed, drum roll please, 100 million times. That's how good it was. That's how powerful it was. That's how well it converted. They just mailed it to every list of breathing human beings they could find. And Gary got a nickel for each one. Anyway, that's Gary Bencivenga. And he says Frank Becker's book, How I Raised Myself from a Failure to Success in Selling, was the most important book in helping him understand how to sell. How do you like that? So that's one book. The other book, Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. I hope you've heard of that book. I hope you read it. It is a great book on persuasion. People think it's just about how to win friends and influence people. No, it is actually a master class. I mean, that doesn't even do it justice, but we'll call it that for now. It's a master class on persuasion. In fact, I've heard this said from a lot of different sources, and it might even be true, that if you are recruited to be a CIA agent, someone that goes out there and does stuff, you are required to read and master that book, because it is apparently just magic in terms of teaching people how to win people over. Now, here's the thing that nobody knows, and I can't say it for sure because I don't have the absolute evidence, but I am 99.5% sure, and I think I'd put up $5,000, maybe 10 in cash on the table for someone to prove me wrong. And here's my insight that amazingly no other copywriter has ever had. Those two books, How I Raised Myself from a Success to Failure, How I Raised Myself from a Failure to Success in Selling, and How to Win Friends and Influence People, were written by the same man. And the man who wrote them was Victor Schwab. Yes. Here's why I believe that. Number one, Victor Schwab wrote the advertisements for both of these books. All right, well, that doesn't necessarily prove anything. Number two, if you read everything that Dale Carnegie wrote before this particular book, it's like two totally different human beings, like night and day. His book on how to do public speaking is, I guess it's a good book. It put me to sleep. It's just not really well written. And how about Frank Becker? Well, Frank Becker, God bless him, was a professional baseball player who became an insurance salesman. And he never wrote anything his whole life until suddenly he wrote a masterpiece called How I Raised Myself from a Failure to Success in Selling. That's pretty amazing. Just on the face of it. It's very unusual for someone that has done no writing or has written poorly his whole life to suddenly write brilliantly. But here's what's amazing. Put these two books together. Now that I've told you, first of all, get them. If you're a serious scholar of this business, get them. Put these two books together and read them simultaneously. And you tell me if they were not written by the same guy. They were certainly edited by the same person. And both of those books not only have great information on persuasion, they are also great books on how to write persuasively. They're demonstrations of how to write persuasively. The chapter titles, the subheads, the way he opens, the way he closes, the way he keeps things moving along, the way he tells a story. I'm saying he because I'm pretty sure it was Victor Schwab that actually wrote both books, wrote both books. No doubt got all the information from Becker and Dale Carnegie, but the guy that sat down with the pen and paper or typewriter was a very, polished writer. There's a professor at Vassar College, and his expertise is forensic writing, whatever you call it. So you can give him a piece of writing, and then if you give him, let's say people are trying to figure out who the heck wrote this thing, he can figure out who actually wrote a letter or an article or even a book just by doing forensics. He can see patterns of language, and maybe someday if the guy's still around, still alive, still working, and I feel I have money to burn, I may hire him to help prove the thesis that these two classics of self-improvement, and you really don't get much higher up the tree than these two particular books, was actually written by Victor Schwab. So that's Victor Schwab. And his book, How to Write a Good Advertisement, is a really good read, and it's a good book. So that is my suggestion to you, to add this to your pile of books. I've been suggesting books one a day for the last several days, and if you've missed any of them, I strongly recommend that you go back and assemble that list. Tomorrow, or the next time we get together, I'm going to talk about two books, both by living authors, that I also highly recommend. See you then.